The world is holding its breath as a deep, ominous sound echoes from the depths beneath the Euphrates River. It's a sound that hasn't been heard in centuries, a foreboding warning that sends shivers down our spines, and now the Jordan River is terrifying scientists, with its chilling message that he's coming back. Who is this mysterious figure, and what does his return mean for humanity? As scientists and experts scramble to decipher the meaning behind the terrifying sound, the world watches on in fear and anticipation. Is this the beginning of a new age of darkness, or will we find a way to stand strong and fight back against this ancient threat? Let's dig deeper to find out. When the disciples saw Jesus walking on the lake, they were scared. "It's a ghost," they muttered and shouted out in horror. However, Jesus instantly urged them, "Take courage, it is I." Just before dawn, Jesus went out to them and approached them while walking on the lake. Don't be afraid. Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 through 36 is the section of the Holy Bible that it comes from. It tells the narrative of one of the most well-known miracles that Jesus performed. From the Sea of Galilee down to the Dead Sea, the Jordan River is 156 miles long and flows in a direction that is north to south. It is located on the western border of Syria, as well as the western border of Jordan, making it the easternmost point of contemporary Israel. There are approximately 185 references to the Jordan River in the Bible, and this is likely due to the river's extensive length and central placement. In Genesis chapter 13, while Abraham and Lot are dividing up the land to which God had led them, the Jordan River is alluded to but not expressly mentioned. Abraham gave Lot the first opportunity to select his portion of the land, and Lot selected the Jordan Valley, which was a fertile region that was well watered by the Jordan River. This was a defining moment since it not only demonstrated that Lot was a self-centered person, but it was also pointed Lot in the direction of the wicked city of Sodom, which God would afterward demolish. See Genesis chapters 18 and 19. After many years had passed, when the Israelites were making their way from their enslavement in Egypt to the land that God had promised them, the Jordan River served as both a barrier and a pathway for them. Moses was not permitted to enter the Promised Land and was only able to view it from a mountain across the Jordan River before he passed away. This was the people's punishment for mistrusting the Lord's care when he first brought them to Canaan. The people had already spent 40 years wandering in the wilderness as a result of this mistrust. The Israelites of the following generation were the ones who found themselves on the banks of the Jordan River, poised and ready to cross into Canaan at last. Now, the only thing that stood in their way was the Jordan River, and it had reached flood level, according to Joshua chapter 3, verse 15. Joshua, the new leader of the Israelites, obeyed the order of God and told the priests who were carrying the Ark of the Covenant to stop in the middle of the river and stand there. They listened, and as soon as they did, the waters of the Jordan ceased flowing, clearing the way for the Israelites to cross the river on dry ground. The Israelite tribes of Gad, Reuben, and half of Manasseh resided on territory on the east side of the Jordan River, but they assisted their fellow Israelites in capturing the promised territory first, and this marked the beginning of the conquest of Canaan. After the Israelites miraculously made it across the Jordan River, Joshua instructed the people to construct 2 memorials. 12 stones were taken from the river and placed on dry ground, and 12 stones were taken from the banks of the river and placed in the middle of the river, where the priests had been standing. Because of this, the place of God's display of might on Israel's behalf was marked for future generations. The Jordan River is mentioned a great number of times in the Old Testament, most frequently in accounts of conflicts and battles involving the Israelites. In the battle that Gideon led against the Midianites, the river played an important role as a strategic location. In a later conflict that took place close to the Jordan River, King Saul and a number of his sons were killed. In several other texts, including 2 Samuel chapter 2 verse 29, chapter 17 verse 22, and chapter 19 verses 17 and 18, it is mentioned that the Jordan River was crossed in order to fight an adversary. There are a number of instances in which the prophets Elijah and Elisha are mentioned in connection with the Jordan River. For example, Elijah lived near the Jordan for a period of time, and Elisha advised Naaman, a Syrian, to bathe in the Jordan in order to be healed of his leprosy, and Elisha caused a sunken axe head to float on the Jordan. In the book of 2 Kings chapter 2 verses 7 through 14, we read that 2 prophets made a miraculous crossing of the Jordan River. The Jordan is depicted in the New Testament as playing a significant part in the spiritual preparation of individuals in advance of Jesus Christ's ministry. John the Baptist gave sermons by the river on a regular basis and baptized those who turned away from their sins. Jesus Christ went to John at the Jordan River to be baptized. Nevertheless, this was not to demonstrate that he had turned from his sinful ways, but rather it was to demonstrate that he totally identified with us and to fulfill all righteousness. Book of Matthew chapter 3 verse 15 and Book of Luke chapter 3 verses 21 and 22. It was along the Jordan River when God the Father declared his love for and delight with the Son, and where the Spirit descended upon Jesus at the beginning of his ministry. Still, for the vast majority of Christians, the thought of the river immediately conjures up an image of Jesus being baptized by John the Baptist. In the Christian religion, this is a pivotal moment. Christians regard the Jordan River as the third holiest site in the Holy Land, after the Nativity Grotto in Bethlehem and the Golgotha in Jerusalem. According to this order, the Jordan River comes in just behind Jerusalem's western wall. This is because Jesus' baptism and the beginning of his public ministry both took place in the Jordan River, making it an extremely significant location for Christians. And that's why the Jordan River should honor him in its name. Baptisms and other religious ceremonies were first proposed to be performed in the Jordan River by John the Baptist. In Jordan, one of the world's driest countries, people are used to having running water in their homes for only around 36 hours a week. The reason for this is that Jordan has one of the world's smallest average annual rainfall totals. Unfortunately, the devastating confluence of a warming planet and rising demand for the resource has recently halted even that pitiful flow. The flow is now significantly reduced to this. Raja al-Buwabishi, age 64 of Amman, is one of the many people who use this method to plan out their days. She's only one of the many others that are like her. She works as a human rights attorney throughout the week, but on Fridays, she transforms into a domestic marathoner, frantically cleaning, washing clothes, and preparing 3 hearty meals in the short time that the water is running. She does it in the middle of a flowing faucet. However, due to a severe drought, residents of some regions of this Middle Eastern country saw their tap water dry up for up to 3 weeks this summer. She expressed concern that further power outages were on the horizon. Everyone, she says, was worried about the availability of water, and because of this, she decided to install a second water tank on her roof and coordinated with her neighbors to split the cost of water delivery via tanker truck. She exhaled deeply and stated, "If you want to feel free, you need 3 tanks," before there was a little silence. The already formidable challenges posed by Jordan's terrain and topography have been compounded by the country's damaged and inefficient infrastructure. The current dilemma may be traced back to a confluence of causes, the most prominent of which is the rise in human population, the depletion of water supplies, and the effects of climate change. It is important to transport water further inland, despite the fact that the country's major water sources are located near its boundaries. This process uses a lot of energy, and as the price of fuel continues to rise, it becomes more expensive. There has been a dramatic decline in precipitation over the past few decades, and what little rain there has been has evaporated swiftly because of the increasing temperatures. Climate change has already shortened the growing season by making summers longer and hotter than they used to be. A professor from the University of Jordan and former water minister Muttered Seadan has made this statement. Climate change is aggressively hitting Jordan in the last 2 years. The river that gave the country its name is severely depleted. The average annual flow of the Jordan River is currently less than 10% of what it was historically, and the flow of the critically important Yarmouk River has similarly decreased. The Jordan River, which was once a furious torrent, has since diminished to a trickle and now empties into the shrinking Dead Sea. For decades, upstream countries like Israel and Syria have diverted rivers for their own use, preventing downstream countries from benefiting from them. For Israel, which has maintained a delicate truce with Jordan for decades, an increase in supply from such sources creates a variety of challenges. All of these problems have led to an unhealthy reliance on pumping water from underground aquifers. Aquifers supply 60% of the country's water supply, but they are being depleted at a rate of about twice as fast as they can be replenished naturally. According to Omar Salameh, a spokesman for the Ministry of Water and Irrigation, the government is aware of the risks associated with further depleting groundwater supplies. But as the population has grown, so has the pressure on the government to meet rising demand, he said. Migration surges from Syria and other countries in crisis have contributed significantly to this, and the rising global population is to blame. Over the past year, the United Nations has received registrations from more than 760,000 refugees. From an estimated 8 million a decade ago, almost 11 million people now call this place home. Mr. Salames stated, "This is part of his defense. We do not have any other alternatives." There are workarounds and solutions available, but they are prohibitively expensive and can only be obtained by those with significant financial resources. However, those who are economically disadvantaged have no choice but to go without food. A sizable section of Jordan's populace receives their drinking water supply from independent water tanker companies. During the summer of this past year, the prices of those tankers, which are traditionally higher in the more affluent areas of Oman's capital city, reached all-time highs. Water is rationed out on a weekly basis and is stored in tanks that are located on top of buildings and dwellings. It is really helpful that the government periodically comes and refills these tanks on a weekly basis. Those who have greater financial resources may be able to purchase many tanks, which enables them to supplement the water supply provided by the municipality with water transported by private vehicles. Those who are already having difficulty are the ones who are hit the most by the lack of available water. People with lower incomes are not able to purchase water from private trucks because they cannot afford to do so, and they also have less space to store water. Each household is responsible for purchasing its own tank, and the repercussions will be severe even if only one of the tanks is broken into. A damaged and ineffective infrastructure has only contributed to make the situation even more difficult, adding to the substantial challenges that Jordan's terrain and topography already provide. The current dilemma can be attributed to a number of different causes, the most prominent of which are the rise in the global population, the depletion of available water supplies, and the effects of climate change. It is important to transport water further inland, despite the fact that the country's major water sources are located near its boundaries. This process uses a lot of energy, and as the price of fuel continues to rise, it becomes more expensive. As temperatures have been steadily climbing over the past few decades, not only has there been a marked decrease in rainfall, but any precipitation that does fall quickly evaporates. Climate change has already shortened the growing season by making summers longer and hotter than they used to be. That's all for the video, but we'll be right back with more videos soon. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, and thanks for watching.